Good evening, everybody. I'm going to call this meeting of the Winchendon School Committee to order for October 6th at 6 p.m. We are going to start our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. Let's see. Quickly want to check with those in attendance today. We do have a bit of a crowd. Anyone recording tonight's meeting other than the town? All right, very good. We are now at our public comment portion of the evening. And so are there any comments from the audience members? Not seeing any. Thank you. That brings us to our consent agenda tonight. We do have minutes. They are in your packet, and you may also have received them from Liz via email. If you haven't had a chance to take a look at those minutes, go right ahead. And if there are any questions or concerns, please bring them up now. All right, happy to entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Larry?
I'd like to make a motion that we move to approve the minutes as presented.
Seconded.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes as provided. Any discussion? Very good. We'll take a roll call vote. Alicia?
Yay.
Karen?
Aye.
Larry?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. It is unanimous. All right. Before we get to the superintendent's report, Mr. King, if we can go a little, let's see, out of order a little bit. Let me make sure we're not on the agenda elsewhere. Nope. I want to recognize the newest committee member here at the Winchendon School Committee. Angelina Della Santa is with us today. Hello, Angelina.
Hi. How's it going?
Angelina is a member of the student government at Murdoch High School, as well as involved in a number of other activities within the schools. And through her representation role of the students in the high school, Angelina is the student appointee to the school committee. We are very, very glad to have you here. Congratulations and welcome.
Thank you.
For those that have been following the school committee for a number of years, we are very glad that Angelina has chosen to take on the full role of the student representative to the school committee. In that role, she will not only be bringing information from her school to the school committee, as other representatives in the past have done, but Angelina will also be a participating member of the school committee. So she will be participating in our meetings, our discussions. Angelina's position does not afford her the option to vote according to existing bylaws, but does afford her the opportunity to bring the perspective of students and her peers to the committee, so our discussions are rich and our decisions, our votes are well informed. So we are very, very glad to have you here. Welcome and congratulations.
Thank you.
Anything you'd like to say to the school committee or to those watching?
I would just like to say that I'm really excited to be able to be on the school committee. I think it's really important that we have student representation on things like this. And I'm really excited to take more of an active role within the policies that make our school what it is. Yeah, I'm just excited to be here.
Fantastic. As a little bit later on, we're going to go down through our agenda, and when we get to our new business section, we may invite you to bring any information that you have from the school, if you're comfortable doing that.
Of course, sure.
That's great. All right. Well, again, welcome. All right, that brings us on to our superintendent's report. Mr. King.
Great, thank you. So tonight we are here to present our MCAS data from the spring of 2022, and I would like to invite Dr. Landman, and the principals will be making that presentation this evening. Come on up. You guys can all come, there's enough chairs if you'd like to all come up at the same time.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Thank you for having us tonight. I'm going to begin by sort of providing an overview of our district data, and it's actually going to begin with some broader context tonight. And then once I've made that sort of initial presentation, the principals are going to talk about their school's data. So that's the plan tonight, and we'll pause at a few points to invite questions and comments and whatever else you might want to bring up. So we wanted to begin tonight by talking about the broader context in Massachusetts and truthfully in the country, but we're going to talk about the Massachusetts context this evening. As you know, this has really been an unprecedented period for public education. There have been tremendous disruptions over the last several years, and these disruptions have had a profound impact on our kids' academic progress. And when I say we, I'm talking about the students here in Winchendon, but I'm also talking much more broadly about students in general in the state and across the country. So in order to kind of frame everything we're going to talk about later, we wanted to start with some slides that are taken from a Department of Elementary and Secondary Education presentation that was made to school administrators and eventually to the Board of Education that speaks to some of that broader context, so that when we get to the point where we're looking at our own data, we're able to understand it in a little better, understand it sort of in relation to what's been going on for young people all around us. So, and I just by way of framing this, I wanted to share a comment which was made to us. We had a wonderful presentation that was a presenter at the beginning of the year as part of professional development for the school district that was made by a gentleman by the name of Rick Lavoie, who came to talk to the faculty about how they can support our students socially and emotionally, which is obviously a major preoccupation that we have at this time. And one of the things that Mr. Lavoie shared with us, he's an older guy, and remembers and knew a lot of people from the prior generation who had grown up during the Great Depression. And he talked about how he remembers and knew many people who'd grown up during the Great Depression who had been profoundly shaped and changed by what had happened to them during the Great Depression. And it shaped their personalities in many ways. And for those of us who are older, I mean, I was able immediately to relate to that. There was all sorts of things I remember about the folks who'd grown up during that time. And he reminded us that the heart of the Great Depression lasted just 18 months. And that had impacted the people who'd grown up during that time for the remainder of their lives. And he brought that up because he wanted us to be thinking about how profoundly the last couple of years of the pandemic has been impacting the young people who we are taking care of and supporting and teaching. And that comment really stuck with me. I've come back to it a lot. And I think as we're talking about this data tonight and this presentation, I think you will find that context matters. So these first set of slides, they look different from the others because they're taken from the state presentation, and then we'll shift back into a conversation about Winchendon's data. So first of all, just a little bit of kind of orientation. So 2022 was the first year of a full MCAS administration for grades 3 through 8 since 2019. So there'd been a 3-year pause. The students in grade 10 had not taken an MCAS test since 2019. So along with everything else, there were disruptions in how the state conducted its testing over these last several years. So broadly speaking, here are some of the things that DESE highlighted. that the 2022 MCAS showed mixed results compared to 2021, right? So remember, 2021 data, you may recall from last year's presentation, there was dramatic drops in student performance over how they'd done in 2019. So math scores in 2022 statewide went up from where they'd been in 2021, but still remain below the levels they were at in 2019. Language arts scores declined further. So kids did more poorly in 2021 in language arts than they had in 2019. And the results statewide went down further between 2021 and 2022. Science scores was not much change. They increased a little bit from the previous year. So the state was sort of making this point that when we compare the results that we've gotten this past year to pre-pandemic levels, we have a ways to go across all subject areas to fully recover the learning losses. This is going to be a multi-year process of recovery from what has happened. In language arts in particular, they highlighted a couple of things. First of all, that student writing scores declined across the state pretty substantially, and that had a real impact on how kids did in language arts overall. And secondly, and this is has been a real source of concern for all of us, younger kids, the little kids, we really saw the impact very intensely with them, that there were real concerns in terms of early literacy scores. Finally, the last big theme of their presentation was around absenteeism. So the rate of chronic absenteeism across the state went way up last year. Obviously, many kids were out because of COVID, right? And many kids were out because they were close contacts of kids, close contacts of those who had COVID. So, and then of course there are also sort of the social emotional things that started to impact attendance as well. And it remains a challenge, continued to be a challenge across the board for recovery efforts. So these are like big picture themes that the state brought forward. So here's the state picture, right? If you look at, this is the language arts picture over several years. And what you see is, in that right-hand column, is the big picture, which is that from 2019 to 2022, across every grade level, the percentage of kids who are meeting or exceeding expectations in language arts dropped. So significantly fewer students met expectations in spring 2022 than did a few years earlier. And in 2022, the decline in outcomes from 2021 was most pronounced at third and fourth grades. So you can see that for the youngest kids, really in this most recent year, right, those youngest kids really had a hard time, and it showed up in their outcomes.
So this, Jonathan, statewide,
This is state results.
all grades, statewide experience decreases.
That's right. So this is, and it's not all kids. There are kids who did okay, but a far smaller percentage of students met expectations, meaning that statewide there was just a real change in outcomes. And by the way, we aren't, this data isn't here, but the National Assessment of Educational Progress showed a similar significant decrease in student outcomes. So the impact of lower writing scores had a big impact on that last slide, where we saw that overall decline. Each language arts test includes a required essay, and in 2022, those results declined significantly, how kids did in the writing parts of those tests. So the number of test takers receiving a score of 0, meaning the children wrote absolutely nothing or just put a couple of words down and gave up. It increased from 19% in 2019 to 31% in 2022. So there were a lot of kids who, for whatever reason, did not even really give it a try. And
John,
the states. Yeah, sorry.
I'm sorry to
No,
interrupt
it's fine.
again, but again, we're still on statewide data.
All of these slides that are this color scheme are statewide results. So
The colors help. That's
Yeah.
good. Thank you.
yeah, so then thank you. I appreciate you asking that question repeatedly because I want to be really clear. We're not yet talking about Winchendon data. We're talking about this big, broader context of what's going on across the state for children, young people in the state. So the average points scored per essay decreased in 3 to 8, with larger decreases in grades 3 through 5. So you can see here that the average points earned dropped further for the younger kids than it did for the kids in 6th through 8th grade. In writing, in the area of writing. I also want to just point out that in general, you know, the students have been for a long time not scoring nearly as highly as we would like them to be scoring in writing, but they were especially low in this area this past year.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah, Karen?
may I ask Jonathan a question? So and I obviously have not taken an MCAS test in the lower grades, or actually any grades, but in the lower grades, even though they may have a writing prompt, I would think it would not be as significant as for the higher grades. Am I correct?
So the prompts become progressively more complex as the kids get older, but the prompts that are on the MCAS in writing are challenging at every grade level for the kids at that. They are age appropriate for the children who are taking them, but they are always asking students to write in response to text and
Okay.
to back up what they're saying. They require a pretty substantial set of writing skills. And as the kids get older, the demands just get more substantial.
Just because when I'm looking at this, it says each ELA test contains a required essay, and we're scoring, you know, the 3 to 5. And I know that, you know, when we look at how we educate children, we are teaching children. We're basically teaching them from, you know, kindergarten through 4th grade, you know, how to learn how to write. And then from 4th grade on, we're teaching them how to write, you know, how to express what they know. So I'm just wondering how they're factoring that in on the scores, especially in the 3 to 5, and how that's impacting
I think I'm understanding your
scores.
question better. So the expectations in terms of what children are producing in their writing are based upon what is developmentally appropriate for that age level. So a score, a high school senior's essay, or high school sophomore's essay on an MCAS test, the expectations in terms of what they produce to get a passing score or to get a higher score is completely different from what
Right.
is expected of a younger child. So does that answer your
To
question?
an extent, I just wonder.
Have rubrics that teachers have to follow when they grade those.
No, I understand that, and I mean, the teachers aren't grading the MCAS, so I mean, that's a totally different thing. But I mean, my concern when we look at any kind of standardized testing is, especially when we're looking at kids that are testing in 3rd grade that are coming in from 2nd grade, having not been in school during COVID, is they may not have had the rubrics in the same way. So I mean,
think
these
that-
are all concerns.
I think that a large part of why we saw this decline was that there were big gaps for kids in their learning, and those have showed up in how the kids performed on these tasks. Right, the tasks on the 2022 MCAS were very similar to the tasks on the 2019 MCAS, but the experience of the kids
It's
who were
totally
taking the
different.
tests had been very different.
Thank you.
So here you can see the math results for the state again. And again, that right-hand column speaks to this overall change in the percentage of kids who are reaching or exceeding expectations. And you can see that it's dropped across the board. Now, interestingly, on the 2022 MCAS exam, across the board, math scores went up. But they went up after having dropped even further than the language arts scores the previous year. So we're still well behind where we were before the pandemic began. Mm-hmm. We mentioned absenteeism at the start. So absenteeism, this is a huge deal. So students have attended less school over the past several years. The average student missed 11 days in 2021, and the average student missed 15 days in 2022. So that is getting close to 10% of school days that the average student missed. 18% of all students in the state missed 18 or more days. They missed 10% or more of the days of the year. And 28% missed that many in this past year. So almost a third of the kids in the state missed 10% or more of the school year. And chronic absenteeism for students went way up in grades 3 through 8. It increased by 138% in 2022 as compared to 2019. That is a huge change. I don't even know what to make of this date. You know, this date, it says 1.7 million days of school were missed because of positive COVID-19 cases. And the state says that doesn't even include staff absences or this was the thing it just blows my mind. It doesn't count the days that students missed as close contacts. So, I mean, the number of days, who knows what the number is. It's a sort of a mind-boggling, gap. And when students have this chronic absenteeism, the impact on the outcomes is profound. So this is the data for students who are not chronically absent versus kids who are chronically absent. So if you look at this, and this is 2 years, 2019 and 2022, side by side in each of those little sets of bars. So for students who were not chronically absent, 54% met or exceeded expectations in 2021, and in 2022, 46% met. But for the kids who were chronically absent, it was 29 and 25% who actually met. So for the kids who were chronically absent, the chances that they were going to meet expectations on MCAS were dramatically lower, right? And here we are saying that nearly a third of the students in the state were chronically absent. So those kids were, from the start, just at a huge disadvantage. And you can see in math that's even more dramatic. So this is a fact. This is affecting everybody. So now I'm going to shift gears. So that's the state picture, right? And now what I want to do is talk about what was the Winchendon district data, and how does it fit into this broader picture, right? And here we go. All right, so as I mentioned, the state trend was that language arts scores declined further beyond last year's decline. And now here you see the Winchendon composite scaled scores. This is really a measure of how many students were able to meet expectations, how many students, it's a measure that kind of gives you a sense overall how did kids do on the test. And you can see that in our district, for kids who were not in high school, the scores were higher in 2019 than they were in 2022. And at the high school, the same thing happened, right? This is very much in line with what's been happening across the state. Here's the next trend. Writing scores brought down overall English language arts achievement. And this is now, for this one, I didn't want to get too bogged down in showing all the details. This is just grade 10, right? This is just in the exam that, is a requirement for graduation. So what I did here is, and I also mentioned, for our youngest students, the performance in writing is closer to the state level than it is as the kids get older. And their students, our youngest students' writing performance is very similar to their English language arts performance overall. However, when you get to 5th grade and beyond, so as the kids get older, our writing becomes weaker overall than our performance on the language arts assessment, as taken as a whole. And the trend gets progressively stronger. So the older our kids get, the more our writing is not where we want it to be. So these are results at 10th grade. And what I've done is I've just removed some of the parts of the language arts exam that don't pertain directly to writing, and left in those domains that are really about writing skills. And what you can see is that in those areas, and in the areas that are not up on the screen, the difference between our performance and the performance of the state as a whole is much closer. Our performance is more similar to the state. But in these areas that pertain to writing, right, the difference in that right column, the difference between our performance and the performance of kids across the state is significant. So if anything, if writing scores brought down overall ELA achievement in the state, in our district, it brought it down further. This is a major area that we've been talking a lot about, where we are gearing up to put a lot of attention into, strengthening our writing. And in general, in the context of what's been happening in the state, writing was a challenge for us as well. Next change, we mentioned that another statewide trend is challenges in early literacy. Well, statewide on the ELA exam, at 10th grade, students earned 71% of the possible points. By contrast, at 3rd grade, they earned 52% of the points. Here in Winchendon, where we are still working to, close the gap between our students' performance and the students in the state, 10th graders earned just 59% of possible points, but our 3rd graders earned 48%. So our younger kids had an even harder time. It's still a lower percentage at the higher grades, but interestingly, we were much closer to the statewide average. So you see how at 3rd grade statewide, kids typically earned 52% of the point. Our kids earned 48. Our 10th graders, the gap between our 10th graders and the 10th graders statewide was greater. Next trend, math scores across the state still remain below the 2019 levels, and again, you see in Winchendon the same thing. Our non-high school students' composite scaled score dropped between 2019 and 2022, and the same thing happened at the high school level. So we still remain below the 2019 levels. It's similar here to what's going on across the state.
Jonathan, these numbers, are those represent a number of students that were?
This is the state's, the way that the state gives you an aggregate picture of how all kids in the district did on a given assessment. So, and in this case, it's even a bigger aggregation because it's how they did across the assessments at multiple grade levels. So they are able to give you a numeric score that says, when you look at, all the kids in the district and you give each of them a numeric score based on how they did on their test, and you bring all those numbers together and then you average them out, this is what you come up with. So what you see is this tells you that overall achievement in the district in math dropped as it did in the state. It dropped for us over these multiple years.
So that calculation is not affected by changes in the size of the student population, is it?
No, it's really a measure of, overall, how did we do relative to this, what was possible.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Hey, Larry.
So the drops, are they, would you consider them significant drops?
Well, I would say that all the drops.
Someone looks at that and sees a 4-point drop,
So,
might not think there's no sense of urgency.
so here's how I would describe this, right? Everybody has been facing significant headwinds, right? And we want the community to understand these are a huge source of concern for people in education. We are really, we have a lot of work to do to help our kids, recover from what they've been through, and to be able to, develop the skills that they need for life. And so any drop is something that makes us unhappy. The drops, what you're going to see, so far I've been talking about this very grim picture, but as you're going to see as the presentation goes on, there's actually a lot of really exciting news about how Winchendon is improving. And that's where this presentation is going. We wanted to begin by talking about the fact, so that relative to the state as a whole, there's some very exciting news about what's happening in the school system, and you're going to start seeing that over the next, part of the presentation. But before we move there, we're talking about relative improvements. Our school district is getting stronger and better at what we do over time, and that's showing up in our relative performance and how we're doing relative to the rest of the state. That said, the whole state is in a state of recovery. So I don't know if that is a, so when I look at that, any number like this it's going in the wrong direction. Our students already have a long way to go to catch up with their peers across the state. We don't want to see that number dropping.
Thank you.
And again, we talked about the impact of absenteeism, and absenteeism remains a challenge in the state, and it's an even bigger challenge here. And you can see that, we had almost 40% of our students had 10 or more absences last year, and 12.4% had over 20. So they missed more than 10% of the school year. That's a lot of time out, and those kids have further to go to catch up than their peers do.
40% of Winchendon Public Schools students had 10 or more absences
Last year.
Unexcused or excused? I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
I'm sorry, couldn't hear.
Excused or unexcused?
Oh, these are excused absences. This is just, these,
If I may, the state makes no differentiation.
makes no
Okay.
differentiation. Yeah, I'm
Excuse-
sorry.
An
Thank
absence
you,
is an
yes.
absence. You're missing time on learning.
Thank you.
But this includes excused absences. So we're going to transition to presentations from the schools. And just want you, if there's any further questions or comments before we move on, I want to give you that chance, give you that opportunity.
Mr. Chair, so I guess this might more be a question for Mr. King. So in regards to the absenteeism, and I know that we have people that go out and try to address this, but do we know, and I know that we had a lot of COVID in the district last year, so I know that's a big piece of it, but I know that there isn't a lot of data that we've gotten statewide on how many families are being affected by the fact that maybe students aren't able to make it to school because of impacts in their family due to COVID-related deaths or illnesses that aren't necessarily direct illness of the student. So have we been able to, I know we weren't doing that necessarily, but is there any way for us to look at that going forward? Is it something, I know that we've had some tragedies in the district without getting specific, but is there a way to look at how that might be impacting absenteeism going forward, maybe?
Yeah, I think, the only data we can use is what's provided to us, right? So when you talk about what's going on in an individual's home, we're not always informed of that, and that's okay. A student is absent for whatever reason. A parent calls in and says they're absent, or doesn't call in and says they're absent. So in terms of tracking that and having any reliable data, I would say that would be really difficult to do, because we would be dependent upon families providing that to us. I think what's really important as a part of this presentation tonight is the message here from the state is that this is as a result of COVID. And as you pointed out, we're one of only 3 districts in the state that actually had to close a school
Right.
due to the amount of students out for COVID. So I think I'm not surprised by seeing that our number was higher here in Winchendon. We spent a lot of time last year, and I'm not trying to rehash all this, but talking about vaccination rates and all those types of things, and those things that impacted why students missed school. So if you think back before we did the test and stay program and some of those types of things, students and the close contacts that we had to track and the number of students that were impacted by one positive case was pretty extreme. And the same student could have been impacted over and over, depending on, how they interact throughout the day. So I would see that increase relative to the state as really COVID dependent, but in terms of how that's impacted in individual homes and whether or not a student can get to school, I think it would be really difficult for us to track in a meaningful and reliable way, I guess is what I would say.
Okay. I'm just trying to think because I know that the COVID numbers are fluctuating right now, and I'm just worried that, we're held to a certain standard by the state, and I know that I don't want it impacting our school district negatively, data-wise. I have a love-hate relationship, obviously, as many of you know, with the whole MCAS piece. But I think that we need to, as a district, as much as I know that we can only go by what we're told, there are certain situations that we may know through different means what's going on in a home, or we may find out what's going on in a home. So if there's a way to, at least for our own records, keep data that we can somehow, just for our own records, keep track of that, I think that would be helpful going forward. So like if next year we're sitting here with MCAS data and we can say, well, you know, maybe a piece of that is because of some tragedies that took place. I'm just thinking
No, I understand.
outside the box here, just to think of where
I
we
totally
are.
understand. But I think I would like to make the point before we move into schools, and I think it sort of came up, and I think some of the questions hint around at it. I just want to be really clear. You know, we're in the same boat as everyone else, and I think that the bottom line of what Dr. Landman just presented is we're all in the same boat, right? Every school across this state, and again, even broader across the country, but we were all in the same boat. We faced the same challenges. We had the same COVID. We had all the same rules applied. You know, we had all the same types of reasons people had to be out and so on and so forth. So, you know, things weren't different here in Winchendon in terms of how we had to operate relative to, you know, the situation. Everybody's in the same boat, and the data isn't terribly positive. However, you know, it's not all dire. You know, I think what we really want to get into now is sort of the school data, which as much as we paint a negative picture, and yes, we know that kids are behind, but I think the interesting piece that it doesn't mean individual students, you know, if you were a 7th grader when COVID broke out and now you're a 10th grader, I want to be really clear. This data doesn't say that you're further behind today than you were when you were in 7th grade, right? What this data says is if comparing a 7th grader today to a 7th grader pre-COVID, our 7th graders, or given any particular grade level, is further behind. They're not as far, you know, they might be 6 months further behind or a year. We can't put a number on it, but the point is that our kids who sit in front of us are not individually further behind, but as a grade level, as you look at them from year to year, our 3rd graders today, 4th graders, 5th graders, are a little bit further behind as a group than the 3rd graders were in 2019. I mean, I think that's really what we want to kind of keep in mind as we think about individual students who sit in front of us. They all grew. They all are better than they were then. They just didn't accelerate as much as they might have without COVID.
I think we have amazing students, and I think we have amazing staff, but I would make the point that we are different in Winchendon because we did have to close down our school.
Well, I
So
want you to see the
in
data.
a
Let's see the
regard-
rest of the data and
Right.
move on to the school stuff. I think it tells a nice story.
We got these, all right.
All right.
So, do you want to switch seats with me?
No, that's fine. Do you want to do the question?
I'll do yours.
Toy Town Elementary. I'll sit back a little. So this shows you the initial piece of information that you'll see on the website for the accountability. It goes through our our names and our sort of our lowest performing student group, and it also shows the similar story that in 2018 we were at 11% for school accountability. The 2019 to 2021 fell to 8, and in 2022, we were actually kind of expecting to see a decline, but we're happy to celebrate the 1 point that we did get in the upward tick for the percentile. So with a new principal and new staff and looking at our curriculum really closely, I feel like that's a big win for Toy Town. So, do you want to go to the next one? Oh, perfect. Thank you. So here are our subgroups and how they've broken down. We do think it's important to note that you'll notice that there's no data in 2018 and 2019 for low income, and that's because they changed the low income and the economically disadvantaged students to, by fall 2021, DESE no longer reports data for the economically disadvantaged student group. Instead, they report for a newly defined low income subgroup. So unlike the economically disadvantaged group or the former low-income group that they used in 2015, the new group includes a broader range of disadvantaged students who are identified through one of the three different sources. So it's one of the criteria is the students who participate in one or more of the state-administrated assistive programs like SNAP, that sort of thing, Medicaid, DCF. The second is students who are homeless. And the third are students that are identified as low income through the supplemental low income data collection, was reported by DESE. So this change also impacts the membership of the high needs student subgroup, which is unduplicated count of all students in a school or district belonging to the students with disabilities. The English learner, EL, and former EL, and/or low-income subgroups. In 2022 accountability results, the 2022 data for accountability indicators include students who meet the new definition for low income. Earlier data for accountability indicators includes those students who were previously identified as economically disadvantaged. So you'll notice that throughout all of our slides. Next, we'll take a look at our ELA cohort data, and we believe that it's incredibly important, especially in these times, to compare our students to themselves. So we're looking at our current sixth graders, and if you look at the top line, that would be in the year, this is where they were in the year 2022 as fifth graders as compared to where they were in 2021 as fourth graders. And so you'll see a really honest comparison of the same students.
Did you want to say something?
Well, I just, again, to match back to what the state data showed was specifically in ELA at our earlier grades was that there was a continued slide from 21 to 22 that was not seen in math. So this follows that state sort of component here where they looked at the number of students or percentage of students meeting and exceeding targets. So we're following that trend overall, in general. So I just wanted to point that out, that's,
Right.
although we don't like it, it is follow exactly what's going on across the state overall.
You'll notice that in the bottom row, there's no SGP, so that's the student growth percentage. So that's why there's an NA in that box.
Why?
Because there was no.
There was no
Because
growth,
there's
well,
no
because they
testing.
didn't take it the year before in third
They
grade.
didn't take it the year
Right.
before.
Yeah. If I can add one more thing, the student growth percentile ranking of 42 is a ranking that is in what we consider to be normative growth for a year. So to me, that actually is a victory, right? That has not always been the case at Toy Town, and it's a good thing to see that the growth level was there. That's better than it's been in the past, so.
All right. And this is the same group, and this is their math data. So again, I'll give you a moment to take a look at this, at the trends. Our growth rate in ELA has been accelerating and going in the right direction, but we do still have a lot of students that we're really concerned about. We've put in a lot of intervention support for students in small group instruction as much as humanly possible to try to help students make up for some of these losses that they've had with their academic abilities.
Mr. Chair.
Mm-hmm.
So as you show these, if you add the partially meeting and the meeting, you see progress, right? They're making progress.
Right,
We're getting better.
right.
We'd like to see them higher, of course, but we're making progress. We're moving in the right direction. And the one that I'm most pleased to see is the not meeting. The not meeting, we had 36 with 92 kids, and then in 22, we had 30 with 4 more kids. So 6 fewer kids didn't meet it, with 4 more kids taking the test. So, they're quiet victories, but they're victories. So we are moving in the right direction. And that's what I think we should keep in mind, because the whole idea of comparing students during the last 2 years with COVID is very slippery slope to go down, because I think Karen pointed it out, students were impacted in different ways. It wasn't like kids were just skipping school and having there were reasons why they were out, and many different reasons. So with all the things that our staff had to face and our leadership had to face, to see any kind of progress is truly amazing. And I think, you should I don't want you to, think that we're there, but I do want you to know that you should be proud that you've made some progress during the most difficult time, probably in the history of our educational system. You still
Right.
made progress.
I agree, and I do agree, Karen, as well, with the story of the children and the story of the school. I think it's critical that we are focusing on the individual students and we're celebrating their individual student growth. And I've challenged my staff to look at all of the students they have this year and to make a commitment that 100% of our students are going to see a year's worth of growth. Doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be at benchmark. It means that wherever they are right now, they're going to experience a large amount of growth, maybe even more. I'm hopeful for that. I feel like we have a lot of systems and a lot of things that are in place, and we have incredibly supportive families that are going on this journey with us, so I'm very hopeful that we'll continue improving.
Okay?
Mr. Chair, if I may, just real quickly, just to kind of focus us on that SGP column as we go throughout tonight. And those of you that have been here longer have watched these presentations. And you might recall that the growth percentile there, that right-hand column, is not always the numbers that you're going to see tonight, around that 40th percentile, the 41 percentile there. So just as a reminder what SGP is that's comparing individual students to other students who are like them. So, we're taking a student X, whomever it happens to be, and putting them in a cohort across the state with students who scored the same score as them the prior year. And then when they get their score this year, they basically just rank order them and say, where did you compare against other students who scored just like you the year before? So to say that you're in the 41st percentile, you're right in the middle, but the other piece that the state says is, when you get to that 40th percentile sort of threshold, you're not getting behind anymore. You're keeping up. It's a year's worth of growth for a year's worth of time. So the objective in this district, I think, in any underperforming district, like we got to be honest, that's who we've been for a very long time, is to not continue to get further behind. That's the first step. And so we know that those numbers earlier, that Dr. Forsythe was asking about what those numbers were. Those are our proficiency scores. Right? So, if we want to simplify things, those 400 numbers, 500 numbers, those are proficiency scores that the state uses. We know we're not as proficient in others, otherwise we wouldn't be underperforming, let's be honest. But what we really push them, what we focus on is growth. And the higher those growth numbers become, indicates that we're getting closer and closer, we're closing that gap a little bit more. And so we sort of target that 40 number to say, we're not slipping anymore, we're holding our own and we're moving forward. So, to have come out of a couple of years of COVID in an underperforming district and we're still holding on to our SGP, and in fact it's increased. If you look back over time in this district, there's a lot of numbers that are well below 40 over time. And so it's a real celebration to say that we came out of this, and as you've pointed out, fewer students that are not meeting as we matriculate vertically, and the growth scores are, I think, are real positive for our district overall. So I just wanted to be really clear about that as we move throughout the presentations for all the schools tonight. Ms. Diaz?
Sure. Let's go to ELA with our current fifth graders. So these are our fourth graders from last year. So you'll see that we do have the third grade scores from when they were in third grade in 2021, and moving up to the fourth grade where they were last year. So we're hopeful that the students that were able to achieve the exceeding, that we're able to challenge them enough this year that they will be able to get back up there. And again, looking at our student growth percentage, we're excited to see that number 42 there. So we're also, pretty pleased to see the number of students that are not meeting has decreased. Like, we're moving in the right direction.
So if I can just point out, this is really where you see this concern about early literacy, right? Our kids are growing at a normative rate, but overall, as kids across the state, our kids, this is a hard year for language arts for younger students.
And again, same group of students, and these are their math scores. So, we're celebrating, absolutely.
Yeah.
Anytime you can see a number like 40% and not meeting move that much in 1 year's time is it's exceptional. Our students are working incredibly hard to get these scores up. And we're really focusing on teaching to the standards, not practicing for MCAS, we don't constantly have it on the forefront that this is what we're doing. We're trying to beat MCAS. We're really looking at what's our standards, what's our teaching practices, and what are the things that are going to be the most beneficial to our students as they are lifelong learners. All right. And this is a comparison from the 2018, this is school-wide, to the 2019 and comparing it to the 2022, sorry. So again, you'll notice that the economically disadvantaged category is over after 2018, and then that group comes into the low-income group.
I hope everybody's noticing that very nice trend from the left to the right side of that screen. That's what we were trying to point out.
Right.
Our student growth percentage is just gone up significant numbers.
Significant, yes,
Exactly.
Significant numbers.
right. So you will hear Toy Town celebrate the 1% increase, for sure.
So the floor is open if there are any questions, comments, concerns at this point from the board. Okay. All right.
I'm on next. Oh, did we skipping Jess? All right, come back around. Okay, so even though we've seen a huge increase from 2018 to 2019 to 21, we've remained pretty steady between 25% to 23%, and we haven't really lost a lot of ground as far as our accountability. So we're holding our own at the high school. I think a lot of it, again, has to do with the attendance and the students not having a couple of years with interrupted learning. So, I'm pretty comfortable with the 23. I mean, there was huge gains from 2018 to 2019, so, we're pretty much holding steady on that. The next one. And again, this is the same rankings that they use at the elementary and the middle school. So as you can see, we are also moving forward a little bit between 2018 to 2019, but our percentiles are, they're not great, but we are making gains, but especially with our high need students. So they are making some gains here. We are currently, in the next couple of weeks, going to be looking at our MCAS scores with the staff so that they can really hone in on where some of our deficiencies lie. But that is, since they just became available and we're starting our next few weeks, we're going to have some PDs to take a look at those scores. So we're definitely going to target that. Next slide.
MJ, could we go back one slide?
Sure.
Perhaps it's too small of an N, but why is there no data for students with disabilities?
There's not a big enough cohort.
Yeah, okay.
You have to have 10.
20.
Yeah, we don't
You
have
have to
big
have
enough.
20, you have to have 20 to represent a subgroup. If you don't have 20 students, you don't meet the threshold, and there's, yeah.
Could be 10.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. And you can see our English language arts. I mean, we are clearly making over the 45, close to 40 between grade 7 and grade 10, and that's really where the last time the students had the MCAS test. So they made some remarkable gains between 2019 and 2022. A couple more students were exceeding. Across the board, we've really done much better in the grade 10 ELA. So when Jonathan was talking a little bit about, the writing, I think we're starting to see a little bit better data at the high school with the writing, because I know they're taking some time to create a program that they're using for writing. So hopefully when our teachers look at the data, we can see that. But you can clearly see that we've made progress from grade 7 to grade 10. I mean, no, that's fine. And these are our current, when I talk about grade 10, they're our current 11th grade students. So the students that already passed last year. So you can see the same thing with the math cohorts. Went from 46 GPA to a 51, and 51 is very significant. So that is a big jump for the math. And, and even though our number of students went down, we're having a big jump. kind of the same thing. Students with disabilities, we don't have a big enough cohort on that, but all of our percentiles are over 40%. So Thad did a great job with that. Math, same thing, in the 50s. So, you know, and I'm very confident now moving forward. We are engaging in a new math program. We talked about the illustrative math last time, so I'm very anxious to see what the math growth is going to look like next year based on the new program that we have. And some of the things I've seen in the classrooms have really been much more hands-on for the kids, a lot more thinking going on. So I'm very anxious to see how that's going to affect the MCAS next year, for sure.
And I want to just say on that point, anytime you implement a new curriculum, there's a very significant possibility of what people call like the implementation dip. I am incredibly excited about this math program. It is going to transform math outcomes in the district. It may or may not happen by next year's MCAS. We'll see.
I think it's going to, something. It's going to be a little one. And then the science, high school has to also pass, instead of just English and math, we also have to be held accountable for 10th grade science, so our students take biology. This is our, because there's no data from growth, because they don't take that biology test in 7th grade, we are, you know, our students did very well in the science. I'm not,
Do we have any comparison data for that last slide for other years?
we could,
pull it up.
I can, yeah,
For science specifically,
Yeah.
the test changed.
right.
So the
It's
reason we
same,
didn't put that up there is that the last time they took a science test, it was the
Next
old test, and this past year was the first time they all took the, what is it?
Next gen.
Second gen, next gen
Yeah, legacy.
test.
right.
So the state has encouraged us not to compare the 2 years, as they were different tests and different types of scoring.
Yeah, we had put that slide in, but we weren't really comparing the same data, so it really just was, we took that out early this morning, so it wasn't the same test. And the way that they, so what I'm looking for, categorize it was even different.
Used to be advanced, proficient, needs improvement.
Yeah.
Yeah, and now it's this.
And so it was really hard to compare them, so, yeah, I did try, but it didn't,
Oh, it's not worth it.
it wasn't worth it, right?
Just wondered why there wasn't another.
Yep,
But that explains it.
yep, that explains it.
Good job. Thanks.
Couple of just quick impressions. Thank you for the mention of the math curriculum. That is exciting. That is why we invest research and invest in curriculum programs. And you mentioned the math, and the scores aren't necessarily tied directly, but certainly encouraging with a new math curriculum. That's also why the new ELA work that you're doing right now, starting that process to get a new ELA curriculum. I mean, we've already heard some concerns about ELA from MCAS scores, let alone from other measures, and that curriculum will continue to be very important, and I'm glad you're doing that work. And the only other thing I'll say is thank you very much for talking about discussing the scores with your staff. It is normal in a school environment to use assessment data to show teachers where the gaps are, so that teachers have that data and are able to utilize that. MCAS scores aren't the most immediate measure of where a student has a gap, but they are a piece of data that I'm very glad to hear that the teachers
We
will
have the STAR testing as well, so using, those two pieces of data, that's, like I said, the next few weeks and coming up months, that's what we'll be looking at. Some of the results from the benchmark testing and looking at the standards with the MCAS, and really taking a look at where our holes are, where the deficiencies, where our strengths and our weaknesses are. So that is, some of the science will be doing that tomorrow a little bit, but everybody else will be starting it later in the month.
That's great.
It's the plan.
Thank you.
So if we could stay on this slide for just a minute. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Jess Vizine. I'm the principal of the middle school. This is the first time we're meeting Ms. Jordan on this stage, so welcome to the school committee. Before we move on to the other slides, what you're going to see, I just want to say, is based on, this really represents what our teachers have been doing for the last 5 years. I was saying to Mr. Murphy before we came in that literally 5 years ago, during this time of the year, we were rolling out a new curriculum. We were rolling out a shift in instructional practices. And I just like to thank our staff and our teachers and, of course, our students who really have stayed the course. They've stayed steadfast. They've kept their eyes on the prize, I guess you could say, and really have kept that end goal and that our shared vision in mind as we've moved on. I'd also like to thank Mr. Murphy and the rest of the school committee, but Mr. Murphy's been here since day one. So thank you for, really sticking with us and trusting the ability of our staff and their professionalism. Also to our past superintendents and Mr. King, we can't do what we do at the school level without that support from administration and then also from our parents and our community. So if you kind of think about middle schoolers on top of everything else that they go through, through the ages of 11 to 14, plus a pandemic, our teachers have kept that rigor and those expectations high. And I think what you're going to see tonight really demonstrates what we've gone through the last 5 years. So this is our school accountability rating. And again, as in with the other schools, Murdoch Middle School has been in the lowest 10th percentile in the state. As you can see, 5%, 7%, and we've now moved up to the 23rd percentile in the state. So that's a huge accomplishment for our
This is where we all applaud.
Hey.
Yeah.
Mr. King and I, we were able to present this to the staff on the 29th when all of the scores came out. And the staff knows I'm not an emotional person, but this is exciting. This is amazing. So, okay, I'm going to get through the rest of the presentation.
So, to be really clear for everybody, we're a turnaround district, and it's that number that makes the difference.
Mm-hmm.
Until you get to 20, you're a turnaround school. So it's magical that in 1 year, a couple of years, but to make a 16 percentile jump is amazing. And to be perfectly clear, that means the middle school is no longer a turnaround school. So you've got 2 out of 3 schools, and we know that the third school is not far behind. But that's our goal in this district, is to take this district and our schools out of turnaround. And the middle school has worked so hard, Ms. Vizina and her entire faculty and staff, to get that number up there. 20 is the magic number, and
Yep.
we're so happy to see 23. We've done a lot of hugging.
And our goal is to stay there and to continue to rise. So really, we've been putting in the hard work, but the hard work continues. Our students are different students in front of us, but they're still our kiddos. And they still deserve, the best education possible. And I feel that's what we're giving them and getting them ready, to go to the high school and prepare them for the future. So the next few slides, we're going to go through our, and for me, the next slide, these are our subgroups. These are our kids that are most needy. And as you can see, we've been able to move up a few points in each of the areas through a pandemic. And as I say, through the hardest years, I think, of a person's life, through their middle school years. So we're very proud of where, we've been able to now, again, this is in comparison to other schools 6 through 8 in the state. So, for those populations are those subgroups, high needs, for example, a few years ago, we were in the 2nd percentile. Well, now we've moved up to the 29th percentile. So it's really kudos to the staff for their hard work and our kids too. Okay. So again, really like to look at the cohort data, looking at how our kids are growing. So we're not comparing one group to a different group. We're comparing, these are the same students. So in grade 5, you can see that mean SGP. We've been able now to get it up to 53. And we've always said 50 is our target. So that's where we really want to get to. And our goal, again, is to reduce the percentage of students in that not meeting category and keep moving them up from there. So these are the current ninth graders, and it's been our hope all along, really to make sure that we're preparing our students for high school, and then wherever or whatever they decide to do after that. So really, that still continues to be our goal. So that's English language arts.
Can I just say one thing? Remember the state context. Statewide, the percentage of kids who are meeting or exceeding dropped, but that's not what happened in Justice School. So, buck that trend.
For math has really been a concentration at the middle school. It continues to be this year, really looking at, we were able to add a STEM special. We used to have one a few years ago, but we're really focusing on the math, also the technology, engineering, science standards, and that is really reaching across the board also into math. We were able to have a math interventionist last year, which was a big help, making sure that we're targeting mainly our 6th grade students and really preparing them for what we call the actual middle school. So as you can see, again, our mean SGP is at 54. So we're continuing to work on making sure that our students are growing across each year. So again, this is our current 9th graders, last year 8th. And as we go down, so the next one is going to be our science, technology, and engineering. So again, there's no growth percentage for science because they take it in 5th grade and then in 8th grade. So they aren't able to measure the growth. But again, our goal is still to continue to reduce the number of students not meeting. And this is not an easy test at all. It is a very difficult exam. And again, it's taking information they're testing from 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. So it's really 3 areas of science, technology, and engineering built into one test. So what we've tried to do is spiral that curriculum. So what they're learning in 6th grade, they're also learning part of it in 7th grade and 8th grade. They're building on top of those concepts. So English language arts, these are our current 8th graders. Again, as you can see for English language arts, we reduced the number not meeting. That's still too high of a percentage for us, 23% not meeting. Again, the SGP is 41. We got to still keep focusing on making sure that our students are prepared in English language arts, and part of that is the writing, as Dr. Landman had mentioned before. So moving on to math. Again, this was a huge jump for us, and kudos to our math teachers because they spend hours and hours planning and reviewing student work and reviewing data. So to go, after not having tested in 5th grade, going from the 20th percentile, going up to a 53 student growth percentile, kudos to them. That's huge. So again, still focusing on making sure that our students are making progress and filling in those gaps in the area of math. This is showing that we're on the right track in terms of this is our current 8th graders. So moving down, this is our current 7th grade, so our 6th graders. You'll see again, 43 SGP. We'd like that to get that closer to 50. We see a huge jump in the number of not meeting. Again, we're looking, as MJ had said, tomorrow is actually our data day for MCAS. So we're going to be looking at individual questions and their writing samples and answers to those writing essays and selected responses to see why, like where are we falling short in our instruction? What standards do we need to go back and focus on? So that's going to be our data day tomorrow during the professional development. As we jump down to math, you can see that our math intervention has really started targeting the students that are needing those extra supports. So moving up to 56, we hit our target and grew even more above that. So still 16%, we will want to keep that number, keep reducing that number, getting our students to be meeting our standards. So moving on, so this is our student growth percentile in ELA. As you can see, we are still working towards getting to that goal of 50, but we've been making that progress. Our students with disabilities is an area that we focus on very closely, and looking at that they dropped from 44 to 39. Again, we want to know why. We want to target and see, where are we falling short in terms of meeting their needs. And then as we go to math, again, we hit our percentage and went above. So again, focusing that instruction and our intervention has really made a difference for our kiddos. And again, still with the students with disabilities, it's still one of those areas that we're trying to close those gaps and make sure that we're filling in those areas that students need help with. And that's it.
Questions from the board?
Yes.
Aaron?
So it's more a comment. Just as someone who spent 6 years as co-chair of middle school, one of the things that I would like to say is that I was asked every year to write a letter to the parents, and one of the things that I think parents and people who don't work in a middle school need to realize is that the greatest amount of growth that goes on for a child is in the middle school years. So that's the greatest amount of emotional, developmental, mental, everything happens during the middle school years. So you had COVID, you had just being in middle school, you had just everything all at once, plus all the wonders of just being a middle school age student. So I commend you on everything you've done. I think that you've done a wonderful job. Obviously, I'd love to get any more once you dig into your numbers. I would love to know what you figure out about the special needs students, because obviously that's near and dear to my heart. So any info, please share it with me. But I commend you and your team for all the hard work you've done, and I think it's amazing that you've gotten the school out of turnaround status. Congratulations.
Thank you. It took 5 years in a pandemic, but who's keeping track?
Just everything's because of COVID. It would have taken you only 3 years if it weren't for COVID.
Yeah, I
there
guess
you go.
so, yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I say shake off that turnaround school rust. You are not
Hey,
a
now
turnaround
that-
school.
I said to Mr. King, now the hard work really continues, because now we need to maintain and continue. So
Does that mean, do you have to be up over the 20 for more than a year after you've been on the turnaround plan?
Traditionally, once you hit 20 or above,
You're
the
off.
commissioner gets the last say. So the commissioner actually looks at every school that exceeds it and makes individual decisions. But traditionally, once you break that 20th percentile threshold, you're out of turnaround immediately the following year, which generally means you lose the financial support, which is not huge, but you get some financial support from the state. The nice thing about this year is, even though that the school will no longer be deemed turnaround, they have decided because of COVID and wanted to make sure that we don't have backslides, they'll continue to support financially through the turnaround grant. So kind of a double whammy there for Jess, out of turnaround, but gets to keep a little bit of money to maintain the efforts. So
So you use ESSER monies for,
get tag money, turnaround grant money is specific for the turnaround
still,
schools.
so you still got another year of that?
It's new this year, and she'll get to keep another year of money. Yep,
Oh, cool.
it's a nice bonus.
Mr.
It's the
Chair.
bonus, it's the turnaround bonus.
It is a bonus.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair,
Karen?
sorry. I'd love to see us, once you get if we need to wait for an official approval from Commissioner Riley or not, but I'd love to see us send something out to the district, making this announcement once we can, that the school is out of turnaround
It might
status.
surprise you, Karen, but we're going to celebrate this.
That's what I'm saying. And
we're-
just
we're
because I,
invited.
right, but I think, because I think that, and I'd love to see something on Winchendon residents page, just saying. I know you won't post it yourself, though.
I'm not a resident.
But I think that, a lot of people aren't aware, and I think it's something that definitely should be celebrated to the max. And I think the more that we can get this information out, and that's why I'm such a nudge about being as transparent as possible with these and with all this information. So congratulations
Thank
again,
you.
Jess.
It's coming. We had to hold our breath until the September 29th because everything was still embargoed. So, we told the staff making this presentation tonight. So you'll see some things coming out very shortly.
Other comments, questions? Jonathan, is that everything you have on MCAS? Nope.
Last thing
Never.
is just, it's a lot of
Never.
green,
Just wanted to highlight those SGPs. Those are SGPs across, for all intents and purposes, everything that gets an SGP. And you'll notice that everything is green, meaning everything is above that 40th percentile, which might be a first in Winchendon, quite frankly. So we're really happy to celebrate that, from a district-wide perspective. I think it means we're really on the right track and moving forward, even coming out of COVID. It sets a really nice baseline for us to move forward from. And that's what, we need some success stories, and we got one this year.
It's fantastic. If you're looking for something for that social media page.
I was going to say, are you putting that on the front page of the
And this one too,
district?
we could do that one too, that you can see the transitions in our accountability percentiles.
Great.
Mr. Chair,
Larry?
can we get a copy of your presentation?
Yes.
I know, can you just email us a copy of this? And I know Karen's going to ask right after I finish whether you're going to put it up on the website or not.
We could put the whole thing up, and we can also take some selected slides to put up, because I think what we did last year when we had some of this started to see some really good news is we put up a kind of a moving deck that kind of went across the front of the site. It put out some highlights, so we can do both things.
I think, I was going to say, you should, if you're going to do that, maybe not spruce it up. I was going to say maybe put a little more explanation, because not everybody is data.
Yeah, we did that last
Savvy.
year, and we could do it again
Yeah,
this
you
year.
did that. You did a great job last year. I'm just thinking about, people anything that I can point people to on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram is great, because I am on all those platforms. And I love showing off what Winchendon is doing, and I like spreading the news. And I think if we can put all the green stuff up, I like green for Go. So I like that you use that color. And especially, anything like Jess's data with the 25 to 53 and all those numbers are great. So I think I'd love that. I did have one question about, I know that we don't have MCAS cohort data for special needs students in the high school. I'm wondering, is there a way to, just because as a special ed advocate, my biggest concern is that we are making sure.
I can find the individual data for sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
just because I think for us as school committee members, I think it's important that we make sure that we're aware of where we are with that population.
We can actually go in and look at by student as well. We can get it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's very important. And another thing that the comments about, what number of a drop is acceptable. We're still in, unfortunately, Winchendon is considered underperforming. And when I came here and asked why nobody ran for this seat, the seat I'm sitting in now, it was empty and nobody was running for it. And I was told that the reason was because nobody cared about the schools. And I think that in the years that I've been here, I've seen more people start to care about the schools. And I think that's being reflected in the fact that, it's not just you guys at the schools that are caring. I think that I see more of the community caring. And I think that anything we can do to increase the knowledge that they have about what is going on in the schools is helpful. But I think that any drop is obviously, I know it's across the board, I know it's the whole state, I understand that, but quite frankly, nobody outside of nobody in Winchendon cares what's going on outside of Winchendon schools, except for when they want to go, oh, well, you know, Monty Tech is doing better. You know, that's how they compare. They might go, our schools, you know, suck or whatever. I just want us to always kind of keep that in mind, and I would 1,000% with you, Dr. Landman, that, you know, any drop is not good. So I think anything we can do to support you in making this better, let us know. Please.
Thank you, Karen. Only thoughts on the special ed population at the high school. If we don't have a significant number of students for a cohort, that kind of data is not reported for important reasons. When you don't have a cohort, you don't have significant, statistical significance, meaning you're looking at individuals and basing decisions based on individuals. Additionally, cohorts are used for privacy reasons. When you're reporting out data for 5 students, it is pretty easy to figure out for some folks who those students are. So let's just be real careful on sharing information
We
about
would just look
data.
at the
that's
data
in- yeah.
internally, I mean, and the teachers would take a look at it.
Great.
Right, that, and let me be clear, and, you know, that I wasn't saying to bring it here and report it, I was more saying for, you know, and just for us as school committee members, there is a way to bring it to us without us personally knowing who the students are. So as a special ed advocate, I can access that data. So there are ways. I mean, I think we have enough students that are special ed students that take MCAS testing in the district that we could still do that in a way. And it's,
I think the only grade that we didn't have enough for that, if you go back through this presentation, is
Was
just 10th grade.
grade
Every
10.
other grade has enough of,
Right.
enough students to have a subgroup. So
right.
it's really only 10th grade that doesn't do
And that was just as far as, and I mean, each year can be different. So I mean, next year we could have enough.
You could?
Right. So I mean, it's just something that as a special ed, you know, I mean, my whole thing with MCAS is,
And we do have students that have portfolios, so that's also
Right.
a different.
right, and there,
aspect. So-
and I mean, we just need to know as a school committee, I mean, part of our job is to make sure at all times that we are moving forward with our students. And that includes, most importantly, our most at-risk students, because the biggest, or the best way that we can tell how good we are doing as a district is how well we are doing by the most at-risk students. And that doesn't just mean students with disabilities. That means high-need students. So, I mean, that is something that, as you know, I know that we may have a small cohort in the sense, and I understand how statistics work and everything else, but I also understand that we do have to be, especially because this is they're held accountable for this on whether they get a certificate of completion or a high school diploma. And I want to make sure that all of our students get a high school diploma from Winchendon Public Schools. So for me, this is pretty personal. So, you know, I'm going to be passionate about it, and I am going to, you know, at times ask you questions about this. Okay? Thank you.
I got you,
Yep.
all of our students matter, so.
Yes. I just don't want, just because we don't have 10 or 20 or however many the state dictates, because we are a small district. I don't want anybody falling between the cracks.
Tomorrow, too, also, we're doing our MCAS data analysis, so you're more than welcome if you want to come and check out what we do in terms of breaking it down. We break it down all the way to the individual student, their SGP, and then also the questions and how, you know, they answered. So any of you are more than welcome if you're not doing anything tomorrow.
What
Feel
time are
free to
you
join
doing
us.
that?
What time? Please,
Um,
sorry.
We are going to be doing our Alice drills, so about 8:30, we'll be starting at the middle school.
I don't want to be a part of the Alice drills. I do this
No,
plenty
but-
of times
no,
at my school,
we'll
so when can I show up so
Done
I avoid
Alice,
it?
we'll be done Alice by 8:30, yes.
If I just want to be very cautious, guys. I may be wrong on the law here, but I just want to be careful that we don't do anything that violates student
Absolutely
confidentiality
not.
rules.
No,
So-
just the process.
Right, so
Yep.
but
Just the
student-
process of how we do
what
it.
Jess was mentioning, that they're going to be looking at individual students'
Yep.
data, and
Correct, yeah.
and
Right.
as a member of the school committee, you don't, we can't share that
Right.
with you.
Right.
So that would have
The
to be.
overall
No,
process.
that
Yep.
yeah.
Can I just bring us back 2 seconds as we wrap this up? We're celebrating tonight.
Yes.
We just got way far off track from the celebration. You've got 2 out of 3 schools up there that are no longer in turnaround, and we've got 1 on the right track. So again, we're celebrating the people who are sitting in front of you and the data they just presented, Ms. Vizina, Ms. Diaz, and Ms. Rickson. Dr. Lehman did a great job putting that together as well. So we're really proud of what we accomplished coming out of COVID, and I just want to make sure that that message is clear, that, we did a really good job as a district getting through COVID, and MCAS, I think, those scores and those growth percentiles and bringing another building out of turnaround is a real indicator that we're on the right track and that we should be celebrating those accomplishments tonight. So I just want to end on the positive here.
I just wanna
Thank
make-
you to the teachers who've been working so hard to make all this happen.
Absolutely.
Mr. Chair, can we move on?
Absolutely. To the principals and Dr. Landman, thank you very much. Congratulations. Well done.
Thank you all.
Mr. Superintendent, do you have anything else to report tonight?
I do not.
All right. All right, moving into new business. Let's get started with our technology recycling. You do have information in your packet about some aging equipment and a plan to find a new home for it. Mr. Superintendent?
Sure, as we have to when we dispose of equipment, it needs to come in front of the school committee for proper disposal. So in front of you are just a number of technology items that are really out of age, if you will, that we dispose of. We have a company that we use to dispose of that. As a part of that process, they do go through that equipment. They reclaim anything that is usable. Most of the times that is metals and those types of things actually on the boards. They give us credit for that, quite frankly, that we sort of carry as a credit for when we get rid of things that we would otherwise have to pay for. So as an example, old television sets, old closed caption TVs have been the ones recently that we get rid of that have no value and actually cost you to get rid of. So this sort of offsets getting rid of equipment that otherwise we would have to pay for. So putting those in front of you tonight to dispose of those properly.
Fantastic. Happy to entertain a motion if there is one.
Mr. Chair, I'd
Larry?
like to make a motion that we move to approve the recycling of the outdated and damaged electronics as presented.
We have a motion
Second.
and a second. Any discussion? All right, those in favor, Larry?
Aye.
And Karen?
Aye.
And Alicia?
Yay.
And the chair votes aye, and that is unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Superintendent.
Thank you.
Angelina, we're getting to you.
I'm
A long time coming, but we're there.
No, it's all right. All right.
So on our agenda, it does say school committee member discussion, and that is going to include, from our new school committee member, Angelina, and the students' report.
Cool. All right. So first up, Blue Devil Weekly is back in production. Our episodes drop each Friday. So subscribe to our YouTube channel for notifications. I'm sure all of you have seen that already. So that's up and running again. Next week, seniors will be taking the SAT and juniors will be taking the PSAT on Wednesday, October 12th. Murdoch seniors will be visiting Worcester State University next week for a campus tour on Friday, October 14th. All seniors will be selling butter braids beginning October 17th through October 27th. Orders will be delivered in time for Thanksgiving. You can contact Miss Elias or Miss Rondeau for more information or to place an order. Our homecoming week is October 17th through October 22nd. The spirit days are as followed. Monday will be Bikers versus Surfers Day. So we dress up as a biker or a surfer, which is pretty fun. Tuesday is anything but a backpack day. We did it last year. It was really fun. You can't bring a backpack to school. Kids brought in I brought a fish tank to school and I carried my books. It was pretty fun. Wednesday, we wear pink for Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Thursday is Decades Day, which each of the classes dresses up as a different decade. So the seniors are 70s because obviously the coolest generation. And then 80s, 90s, 2000s for the rest of the classes. Friday is our senior spotlight, so the seniors wear white and everybody else wears blues to recognize the seniors, which is new, and everybody is pretty excited about that one. And then Friday night is our tailgating at the football game. Saturday night is our semi-formal, our homecoming dance at Toy Town from 7 to 10 p.m. Tickets will be available at lunch for $10. And then also our haunted hallways will be on Thursday from October 27th from 6 to 8 p.m. At Murdoch High School. Tickets for the haunted house will be $5. The elementary PTA is sponsoring a monster ball on Friday, October 28th from 5:30 to 7:30 at Toy Town Elementary. There'll be music, games, and crafts for all students from pre-K to grade 5. They are in need of donations for their basket raffles. And then finishing up for sports, our esports has begun. Super Smash Ultimate competes on Wednesdays at 3:30 p.m. And Rocket League competes on Thursdays at 3:30 p.m. For more information, see Mr. Foster or Miss Rondeau. For varsity field hockey, they play against Clinton at 3:30 tomorrow in Gardner. Varsity football plays at 7 p.m. tomorrow against Abby Kelly Foster Charter at Alumni Field. For cross country, varsity cross country competes at Devon's on Saturday, October 8th at 11 a.m. Varsity cheer competes on Sunday, October 16th at 10 a.m. at Tewksbury High School. And then for full sports schedules, please feel free to check mwlma.org. That's all I have for updates. Do you have any questions?
That was a great report, thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions? Yes.
I just wanted to comment too, there was a nice article in the Gardner News on Jarius Williams, right, and what's the tiny kid's first name?
Calvin.
Calvin, yeah. It's a really nice article on the two of them. It was well done. I know that they're tearing it up, which is great. I'm looking forward. I haven't been to a game yet, but I plan on going tomorrow night. Check it out. But that's all I have to say. The other stuff, it sounds like a blast, though. The hallway thing.
Yeah, I actually haven't been able to participate in haunted hallways since freshman year, which my class got 3rd place, so hopefully we'll be a little bit higher this year when we do it. But I'm really excited about it. It was really fun freshman year, so I'm really happy we get to do it again.
Oh.
And homecoming week is always fun, so I'm excited for that too. Tailgating's one of my favorite things we do, so
Yeah.
I am very excited.
Awesome.
Mr. Chair. Do you know if anybody from the school is doing anything during the fall festival?
Oh boy. Okay, from my knowledge, I know Key Club is having a table at Fall Fest. They're selling bracelets to benefit Camp Sunshine, which is a camp for terminally ill children. They're fundraising. And we've been making bracelets in the meetings, which has been fun. Trying to think, any other school ones?
Okay. Thank you.
Great job, Angelina.
Angelina, a couple quick questions for you on Bikers and Surfers Day. Do we know yet what Principal Rickson and Assistant Principal Doug are doing?
I'm would love to see Mr. Stoka in a Hawaiian shirt, personally.
Hawaiian, okay. That's
but-
making in the minutes. You know that, right?
No, I feel like, I don't know. I could picture Miss Rickson being like the biker and then Mr. Stoka being the
Okay. Okay. Also in the
could
minutes.
picture
Good.
Totally recorded.
I don't know. Whatever.
No,
Yeah, I know.
motorcycle, totally a motorcycle.
You can ride my motorcycle.
Angelina, what were the dates of the haunted hallways?
Haunted Hallways, Thursday, October 27th from 6 to 8 at Murdoch High School.
Oh, just that day?
Mm-hmm.
The one day?
Yep.
Okay, got it. Other questions, other comments? All right,
Are
good
you,
deal.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, are you inviting the superintendent to take part in the bikers and surfers?
We would love Mr. King's participation, as
I think you
always.
should formally invite him right now.
Yeah.
And to give you an exit, I'm going to say we're moving on to old
Thank you.
business. All right, a continuation from our meeting last, or a couple of weeks ago. We have our subcommittee definitions. Thank you to those of you that contributed. I think everyone had access to the Google documentation, the Google Doc from Alicia with the drafts. We do have a complete draft for the policy committee, the collective bargaining subcommittees, the communications committee, the finance committee, and a new committee on curriculum. And so hopefully everyone was able to see those. Additionally, passed around to you just a moment ago was a handout that Larry put together on the calendar subcommittee and the Monty Tech rep position. And so those two would be in addition to the Google document. And so I know everyone had a chance to see the Google document,
No,
so.
Mr.
No.
Oh, I'm-
Mr. Chair, I just wanted you to know, I couldn't open it. It said I needed permission,
Okay,
so I couldn't open, so that's why I took information that we talked about here, and I put those together the best I could, but I couldn't open the document.
all righty.
Yeah, I didn't have a chance to. So,
I don't know why.
I'm sorry, go ahead,
It just
Karen.
said that. And unfortunately, my son wasn't over to visit, who's
IT support?
IT support. He wasn't over for me to.
All right, so,
I think
How would we like to-
did a good job last time. At our last meeting, we made some additions and whatnot, so I think we're ready to go.
so we do have some of our subcommittees that do not have definitions yet, and they will definitely need some work. So if we are to entertain a motion on approving some of the subcommittees, I'd suggest that we omit the Wellness Subcommittee, the Capital Planning Subcommittee, the Sick Bank, the Town Audit, and the CAPS and Keystone Reps. So if we can,
So if we make a motion, just say any of the committees that we have not received.
and I'd like to read the others before I vote on them, unfortunately, so.
you weren't able to access the
No,
document?
I didn't,
Okay.
sorry.
So if there is a motion, happy to take it. If,
I'd like to make a motion, Mr. Chair, that we accept the, what are we calling them,
subcommittee definitions?
the subcommittee definitions as discussed and shared on the Google Doc, minus the ones that we haven't completed yet, that haven't been completed yet. Just vote on the ones that have been completed.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, motion's made and seconded. Any discussion? Larry, was your motion intended to include the calendar subcommittee and the Monty Tech rep?
Yes.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
Okay, we do have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All right, we'll take a roll call vote. Those in favor, Alicia?
Yay.
Karen?
No,
Larry?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, and that does pass with a 3-1 vote. Very good. So that does mean that our remaining subcommittees will continue to need definition. Anyone that's interested, please do make your way to the Google Doc. We can take a look at that, get you access to that, and make any additions there, please, and we'll take this up. Mr. King will probably have to take this up again next time.
Mr. Chair, quick cue.
Alicia?
You assigned certain committees, so I didn't add any information because you didn't list my name. Do you still want me to contribute?
The assignments were really because those folks were more knowledgeable on
Okay.
those subcommittees. If you feel like you've got enough knowledge to contribute, go right ahead.
Okay.
But Larry and Greg, and Karen have done this quite a bit.
Got it. Thank you.
All right. All right, any other old business? Okay, we do have one future agenda item. It was mentioned tonight, I want to say by Ms. Rickson, and that is the STAR data update. I think we're going to have a STAR data update in the fall, and then a comparison STAR data presentation in the spring, is that right?
We'll probably try to do 3, so I think we're ready to, you'll see us again in 2 weeks to give sort of what I would refer to as live data, meaning the sort of STAR and DIBELS types of data that we do at the elementary schools. So to get real data about the kids who sit in front of teachers currently as a baseline for the year, and then hear a little bit about the plans to use that data to drive instruction forward. So we should see that in the October 20th meeting.
Fantastic. Other agenda items for our future meetings? Anything folks want to add now?
I would like to add that if anybody wants anything, if you've had a chance to look at your resolutions booklet from the MASC committee for the upcoming conference in December that I'm going to, if you have any questions or any concerns or anything that you want me to bring to the conference, questions, concerns, issues, please bring them with you so we can discuss them.
Okay. And that conference is in November, right?
Yeah, November, sorry.
Yeah, we just got a shout out from them about those resolutions. Just got it, or I got it the other day.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, they did mail, I don't know if you guys should have gotten them too. They sent out a delegate and they sent it to everybody. It wasn't just sent to me. It was a nice booklet with with all the resolutions that they'll be working on. So if you can, it really isn't a long read. It's very quick, actually. So if you have a few minutes and can look at those and just tell me your feelings on any of them.
All right.
If you have any concerns, I don't think any of them are concerning their general resolutions.
Other future agenda items? All right.
Our first meeting next month, I will not be here. I will be at the conference.
Yep. Good deal. All right, that brings us to agenda item number 11. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chair,
Larry?
I'd like to make a motion that we move to enter executive session to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining and return to open session.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, those in favor, Larry?
Aye.
Karen?
Aye.
Alicia? And the chair votes aye. We are in executive session to return to open session. Thank you. are back in session, the October 6th school committee meeting, exiting executive session and returning to our agenda, and agenda item number 12, the custodial contract. Do we have a motion on this item?
I did. Where did I put it?
I will make the motion.
Go ahead.
I'll give you a break, Larry.
All right.
I would like to make a motion to approve the agreement between the Winchendon School Committee and AFSCME Council 93. Do I have to read all that? Local 1770 AFL-CIO Custodial Worker Union as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, we'll take roll call vote and start with Alicia.
Yay.
And Karen.
Aye.
And Larry.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. It is unanimous. Thank you very much.
Woohoo.
All right, that brings us to closing comments, and we'll start with Larry.
Okay. First of all, again, congratulations to all the schools, but especially to the middle school on their progress that we saw tonight in their MCAS presentations. It's truly remarkable through all that they've had to shoulder the last couple of years that they've still been able to make progress. And in the middle school, instead of a bump, we've got a rocket. It's really taken off, and it's great. And secondly, I do want to thank Greg Vine and the negotiating team for the custodial staff who, you know, we worked very hard together to get this agreement, and I'm happy that we finally got this resolved, and we look forward to a very productive year. Thank you.
Great. Karen?
First of all, I'd like to echo what Larry said. I'd like to congratulate actually all the school district. I think that coming out of COVID, everybody's done an amazing job. The students, the staff, the families, the district as a whole, no matter what MCAS scores say, I think that we've done amazing. And I think that we're just going to go further. I think we're going to keep growing. So I think that we need to celebrate Winchendon Public Schools every day, personally. That's my feeling. That's the first thing I'd like to say. The second thing, I would like to again ask if we can start having any presentations, if we could have the printouts of those presentations during the presentations, because I like jotting notes on the data. It's just helpful. And another thing, I'd like to pass on some information that, you know, just to give an idea, and I know it's also personal, I'm kind of bragging. One of our Winchendon Public Schools alumni has just been, become a member of the national, now I can't remember, it's the NSLS, the National Society of Leadership and Success, for his 4.0, because he's getting a 4.0 in his first term at Mount Wachusett Community College. He has been invited to join that group, and that's going to give him a lot of access to great benefits, but it also is like the National Honor Society for high schools, so it's the college edition, I guess. You might know a little bit about it. You know nothing about it. You're in college. You're in college. Anyway, so I just think that we should also remember that our students, when they leave here, they do great things. And Larry, when you're at the game tomorrow, you should keep an eye out for him because he's working the detail.
Oh, good. Cool.
So he's also taking part in working for our district. So I think that anything we can do, I was glad to see our student representation here tonight too. So thank you for that.
Alicia?
In recognition of the growth that all of the schools have showed, as presented through the MCAS, I'd like to cite In the words of Pat Summitt, after she was awarded the Arthur Ashe Courage Award, keep on keeping on.
I love it. Thank you.
Welcome.
All right, short and sweet. Welcome to Angelina, to our new student representative. Really glad to have you here. Thrilled to have you as a part of the school committee. Congratulations to the superintendent, to the principals, teachers, students, and families. Fantastic data we saw tonight. To bring a school completely out of turnaround status and really show that this school district is making progress where other parts of the state certainly have had challenges is encouraging to see, and we're really glad to be a part of it. And do want to say a quick thank you to Larry and Greg for wrapping up a long contractual negotiation process with a great outcome, and that we'll be able to hang on to our fantastic staff with an agreement that suits everyone well. That is really encouraging. Last comment is more of an announcement. If you haven't seen yet, you do have an email from me in the past couple of days that is encouraging you to participate in the Winchendon Master Plan work that is happening in the town. Jill Sackett, as the chair of the Master Plan Implementation Committee, has sent out that information. If you do have an interest and availability, please feel free to check that out and be a part of that work. Otherwise, we'll entertain a motion for adjournment. You guys want to stay?
You two are all over those. All right, move to adjourn. I think that's what I do. I haven't had really much time to do it, so I don't even know if I did that right.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, and we are adjourned at 8:01. Thank you.